I do think there is a value in looking for certain institutional opportunities that allow us to speak to more economically to many people. Just as an example, in New York City, there is, I'm sure, an interreligious council of faiths dedicated to helping poor and working people. Why hasn't that organization heard about this idea? I mean, this is an example, and to me it's a mystery, but it's there. And I do think that if that interreligious council were to listen to this idea and spend 3 or 4 or 5 hours thinking of it, and let's say there are 30 people on that council, I'm convinced that 10 or 15 of them would get it.
Right.
And they would be able to speak to people, and that would both trickle down and trickle up.
I'm glad you bring that up, because I have a man in mind, Frank Morales at the St. Mark's Church. I'm very impressed with the decisions that he's made, and I've always been maybe overly anxious to have a seminar about Jesus in India. But I think he might be just the man for the job, because there's also another man in the 9/11 Truth movement that I'm impressed with. His name is Kevin Barrett, and he teaches Arabic. He's a Westerner who became a Muslim, but he has that quality of the Quran, and he talks about conviviality. And that's something, if you ever... I read the Quran in a Tibetan refugee camp in India, because I spent 4 years there covering the bases. And the Quran has this quality of beauty and harmony to it. And this is what attracts me to binary economics. It's harmonious to have everybody in society connected.
Yes, it is. And there's, by the way, on the web, a article that I wrote on Christianity. It's called "Using Christian Principles to Enhance Economic Theory," and I argue that in that article that if you take Christianity to be simply the words of Jesus, so we have a limited definition. It's not the Father's teaching. It's not all the things in the New Testament. It's not the epistles. It's just the red. Sometimes Bibles have the red words. If you make yourself a red word Christian and read the words of Jesus, what he says, what he stands for, and you look at right-wing economic theory, you look at left-wing economic theory, you look at mixed economic theory of the left and the right, you look at the Keynesians, you look at all that, and then you look at binary economics. Binary economics is clearly the most consistent theory according to Jesus. And we could expound on that, but just as an example, Jesus says the sun shines and the rain falls on the good and bad alike, that when he broke the bread and included everybody, there was more, not less. The whole principle about the idea that all good comes from God and that we are responsible for the rest. Capital ownership is that's the laws of nature. Capital ownership follows God laws. It's human free will that gets things screwed up, and human free will can result in good only when it's consistent with God's approach. And so loving inclusion is the principle of binary economics. Exclusion is the principle of plutocratic trickle-down capitalism, and also the other element is that private property is what liberates people.
Right.
And so again, that's a part of what it is to be a human being.
You're getting into some of my very favorite topics, but I don't want to launch in on that right now. But I do want to say that I think we should move forward with this feeling of looking at all the resources, and I'd like to see you have a greater presence on the internet. And at the same time, I'm going to make some efforts to start looking into what exactly is going on with the ownership of the internet. And I feel fortified by this wonderful opportunity to have a cable daily show in Manhattan, because the people are very savvy there, to get some feedback. And also, Harold Channer and I are not so much linear people. So I think the Bible has a value, but I like to know not what Jesus said, but I want to see some demonstration in the here and now. And I have tried to explain to Harold that I feel that scarcity has always been transcended, not only with the multiplying of the loaves, but that if Jesus came as a man and had to go through everything that human beings go through, he would certainly have to exert himself in a course of studies. And I find that there's a huge body of knowledge in India, and I'm sure all over the world, but that's one where it's very prevalent, that you have books like the Vedas, but there's another dimension that goes in a non-linear way. And that's what I'm very excited to explore in the future, to see if we can bring people together on all levels, on the internet, also physically. So I'm going to go to Frank Morales and see if perhaps binary economics might be what I was seeking for in this idea of Jesus having studied in India.
Well, I'm all in favor of anything you do. You really have been, you've been very, 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 very good in terms of giving this publicity.
Well, it's the least I can do to give back, because, like I say, because of a fluke of circumstances, I'm an example of capital distribution in this cellular licensing, and it's kind of like a blessing that I never realized I had. You know, I mean, obviously the money, $5 million, is great, and then I lost it in other things because people were saying to me, Paula, it doesn't always come that way. But I'm really glad that it came the way it did, and I'm so grateful for the people who are around me now, people like yourself, that we can have this kind of discussion, and also with Harold and with Joe Friendly, to see if we can maximize what a Manhattan neighborhood network cable access channel going through the physical ground of Manhattan and then through the airwaves throughout the world. I think there is a mechanism to it, and content is king. Oh, and finally, I want to say, I'm not against willpower, Robert. I think we need a lot of willpower right now to keep moving forward with this idea.
Hello.
Hey, Harold, now that we're off,
Good to talk to you again, yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of, we're kind of going like crazy. Were you able to record?